Welcome to Australia's AustCyber's Cyber Week 2022 and growth of the Australian cybersecurity sector event this morning here at the Stone and Chalk Hub in Adelaide. Happy Cyber Week, everyone. I hope you've all been getting involved in all of the events that we've had going on this week all across the country. An action-packed week, as always, for Cyber Week, with events happening in WA yesterday, Melbourne on Monday with our Minister for Cybersecurity, and of course, not to miss out, South Australia and Canberra as well coming up. So a packed full week of events for you. I would like to introduce this morning a welcome to country guest Jack Buckskin. Please give a warm welcome to Jack Buckskin.
All right, how are you? It sounds like the voice of God. It's much louder and much more, a lot of reverb. Love the reverb. Look, for those that don't know me, my name's Jack. I'm a proud Gunner Narungga Werrunggal man, so I represent 3 different groups from South Australia. One from Victoria, but we don't mention them. We love you guys, but we don't really love you guys. All right, so any Victorians here? Yes, oh, there's always one. There's always one. He's sitting closest to the door as well, I notice. But look, for me to be able to stand here and welcome us on the country, I'm honoured to represent my family and my community. I'm the first person in my family to be able to speak language fluently and publicly, and we've come a long way since I started my language journey about 16 years ago. I remember our linguist, when I started learning, saying you'll never get a job in teaching language. Adelaide is not ready for it. 2 years later, I took his job, not a teacher at all. I just came as a speaker and understood what the language was doing, enough to be able to teach it, and after about 5 years became fluent and to have conversations. My children are L1 speakers, so they're the first L1 speakers since colonisation, so they've grown up with it since birth. They speak it alongside English as their first language. I don't count as an L1 speaker, even though I'm more fluent than they are. A bit of a title difference, but they've had opportunities. That's the difference between my children and myself, and even myself and my mother. My mum was the first one to leave the missions and reserves and to come to Adelaide, and that was in 1972. She came as a free person and had the opportunity to grow up in Adelaide alongside non-Aboriginal people, as I have, and now I spend a lot of time teaching language and culture, and it's probably because of my growing up as well. My mother's sister pretty much started Aboriginal education in South Australia, and her partner started native title and heritage sites of significance and looking after them. So and pretty much I was a 9-year-old site monitor and learning from a young age alongside my cousin brother, who was teaching me all the ropes around heritage sites and knowing what to look for. That I remember one time an archaeologist came in and was like, I found some bones over here. We was at a site and he's like, I found some bones over here. And I was like, they're sheep bones, and over here are the human bones. And I remember my cousin brother just got in his face and was like, but you're the expert. We're paying you big bucks to come here as the expert, and put him in his place. He goes, a 9-year-old kid is showing you what to do and what to look for. So around the kitchen table, all I heard was culture, heritage, and then the women in our family are all involved in education. They were like, education. I wanted to drop out of school at year 10 because it got on my nerves. Mum forced me to get through, and eventually I end up teaching culture. So I had no choice but to do this. But today I get to welcome you onto country, and I'll leave you with that one because I understand people have come from afar to be here. All the people live streaming, acknowledging the country that you're sitting on and standing on as well. Everywhere we're on Aboriginal land. So today we all meet on the lands of the Gurna people, and Tarndaganyanga is the dreaming place of the big red kangaroo. We welcome you here. Borkan kumaganamini yalaranga wanga ni manin burning arluku yarta na maning arlu tamping arlugani yartanga tikandi. My Aboriginal name's Ganyapundu and Witpin Akudnawitcha. None of you are going to remember that. So just Jack is fine. You just go, Jack was amazing. But I'm also going to play a little bit of the didgeridoo for you guys. And there's a couple of reasons why I love to play it. One, it's got nothing to do with cyber and security. All right, it's not my forte at all. Just give me a microphone and I can talk the hell out of anything though. But the didgeridoo comes from Arnhem Land, and I pay respects to Yolngu for allowing me to play this. Acknowledge them in their language and in ours. We have 38 different Aboriginal groups in South Australia, 52 languages. You go into languages in Australia, there's into the thousands. So to show respect, it's best to speak people's language, and I do that even when I acknowledge Yolngu. I speak in their language to thank them for allowing me to be able to do that. Well, Marnie, like, my muck's like more, yeah, real good, because thank you is like a real foreign concept to Aboriginal people. We don't say thank you. we don't have a word for thank you as such. We just created those words, thank you, for like non-Aboriginal people because we know you guys love your manners. Like sometimes overdo your manners, but look, it's there now and we utilise them. But it's good that we do this and acknowledge the heritage of places and things that come before us. So as I play the didge, I get you to think about the place that you stand on, sites of significance for yourself, people that have gone before you, for you to be able to stand here. It's good for all of us to understand our own cultural heritage, our own place of significance, and realise that we are specks in space and time. We're all going, what a quote when it's like right next to the space station. It's specks in space and time. They're going to use that banner on a banner one day. But we're specks in space and time. We're literally in and out before we know it. 84,000 years Kaurna have been on this part of the country. They've been in part of this country. We were then referred to as Kaurna in 1920s from a mistake from a guy who did the Aboriginal Australia map, put Kaurna on the wrong part of the country, and now we're known as Kaurna. It's not what we called ourselves originally, but now we're known as Kaurna. So on behalf of all Kaurna people, and more specifically my family, I welcome you. I'm going to play a bit of the didge for you to help to... It's a bit like a minute of silence as well, but there's no silence. It's didgeridoo. You can reflect on the places that are significant to you. It's a medicinal instrument. It's the best way to explain that men can multitask. It does it all. I love this instrument, all right? Really quickly, just before I get out of here, I do want to just say that you mob are going to stick around and enjoy this. I'm going to be shooting off. Everybody loves conferences. We don't love conferences. Last conference I went to was Artificial Intelligence Conference, and I thought that was going to be amazing. Like artificial intelligence, robot learning, all this machine learning kind of stuff. I fell asleep in 5 minutes because all they talked about was data analysis. Hopefully cybersecurity is a bit more other than data analysis. I'm sure there's a lot of data analysis for you guys. Yeah, there is. So I'm not sticking around for it because you'll see me snoring in the corner. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jack, and I'll give you a round of applause for your escape again. And thanks to Paula and the Stone and Chalk Group for setting this up. So AustCyber is actually part of the Stone and Chalk Group. So today we've got a bit about the SCP, which we released this week, that we'll cover. As Paula said, we have been in Melbourne. Claire O'Neill did open up. We're in the bowels of Stone and Chalk there, went to Sydney on Tuesday, and that was an education piece. So there's a lot of stuff coming about education. We'll touch on a bit of that today as well. But today, good to be in SA. I hadn't seen the facility here that we've got set up and got taken for a quick tour upstairs before, and it's actually a very impressive setup here. The whole precinct, when we went up onto that second level and just looking at it, what's being done here is a credit to South Australia. It's a jewel in the crown for sure, and it is being looked upon here across the rest of Australia as a great model to follow. Great work that was done by Steve to get a lot of these things in place, and from Paula, I know I've been working with Paula for a long time. It's about 2018, I think, was the first time we worked together in cyber. So things have changed, but also a lot of things haven't changed, as we've seen in recent times. So cybersecurity is front of mind now. Let's hope we can keep it here. This week hopefully plays a part in actually making that happen. I want to just also grab my clipboard here, which no one else supplied in Australia. We've got an actual clipboard here. Just had paper everywhere else. So besides that welcome to country, which I don't think anyone today is going to actually match, we're going to have a keynote speaker. So Andrew Dunbar will follow me. I'm going to go through the SCP sort of findings and just go over a few of the stats we found there. You've got some brochures there which actually have the SCP. I think it's got a QR code on it maybe that you can download it. So it'll go into more detail. I'll touch on the key points there. But if you want to drill in a bit deeper, you can actually download that a copy there and actually go see it. And for anyone online, you can go and just go to AustCyber.com, go find the SCP on there as well and download it. It's interesting reading, but probably from more of a interesting in the wrong way rather than interesting in a good way sort of thing. With the numbers we dug out there were quite concerning. So when we talk about the SCP, I'll talk about where we're at, but some ideas around how we can probably move out of this a bit quicker. And I think South Australia I can see as being a leader in actually doing that and leading in a lot of ways for the rest of the country to follow. We've also got a fireside chat as well. So I'm just wondering where we're going to put the fire or what we light up. We might all be running for the doors pretty quickly and alarms might be going off. So fireside chat, it's not that cold here, but yeah, we've got a fireside chat there with a few key people. And you got questions and answers already done, that's good. So that makes everyone's job a lot easier. And then we've got an expert panel just to close off as well. And then if there's any leftover food, obviously get into that. When I'm talking, it's probably a good time to go get something to eat, maybe go to the bathroom, all that sort of stuff. When the panel's here, be present. As I said, first thing I want to do is bring Andrew Dunbar on, Executive Director of Research and Innovation, Department of Industry, Innovation and Science. We're going to do a duet just to sort of transition into Islands in the Stream, and he'll just come on as we sing together and I'll just drift off onto the side. Andrew, if you want to step up and start singing, let's go. Please welcome Andrew. You ready? You grab that microphone, I'll stand here.
And Islands in the Stream wasn't in the run sheet, I can tell you. Good morning, everyone. And look, firstly, thank you to Jack. It's always wonderful to have Jack do the welcome to country, and he certainly is one of a kind. So I would also like to acknowledge that the land that we're on here today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. And I also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people today. So as Jason said, my name's Andy Dunbar. I'm the Executive Director of Research and Innovation in the South Australian Department for Industry, Innovation and Science. So long-term investment and support for critical and emerging technologies, I'm sure, will provide Australia with a competitive advantage. It will accelerate productivity growth, it will create well-paying jobs and secure supply chains, and our ability to harness opportunities created by critical technologies will have significant impact on our economic prosperity, our national security and social cohesion. Whilst the Commonwealth Government is undertaking a review of the original list of critical technologies in the national interest, which was published by the previous government, I've no doubt that protective cybersecurity technologies, encompassing, for example, operational technology security, trust and authentication infrastructures, protection of aggregated data sets, protection of AI systems and supply chain security, will absolutely remain a key and critical area of focus and investment, and it will form the basis to grow the cybersecurity industry in Australia that undoubtedly acts as the frontline defence against increasingly frequent and more severe cyber attacks. So critical technologies, the development of a cyber industry in South Australia is certainly a key focus of our department, so it's great to be here with you all today to discuss the growth of the Australian cyber industry as part of Cyber Week 2022. I'm very much looking forward to Jason's presentation shortly on AustCyber's findings on the state of the nation's cyber industry, and certainly commend Cyber and Stone and Chalk on preparing the 2022 Sector Competitiveness Plan report, and I'm sure it will be enormously helpful in informing the Commonwealth as well as state and territory governments to develop policies and deliver programs to support the continued growth of the sector. So as we'll hear today, the cybersecurity industry continues to present as a significant opportunity for the Australian economy. It's contributing, or in 2022 it contributed $2.4 billion to GDP, which represents about an 11% increase on GVA over the last 2 years. The sector currently provides employment opportunities for about 47,000 Australians. We know that obviously there's many more skilled workers that are required. There's a 3,000 person gap between projected number of people employed and expected demand by 2026. So while recent high-profile cyber breaches have further catapulted cybersecurity to the national spotlight, it is worth remembering that Australia is only home to a relatively small domestic market, representing just about 2% of global cyber demand. According to the ASCSC's 2021 report, Cybersecurity and Australian Small Business, nearly half of Australian SMEs report spending less than $500 per year on cybersecurity, which is just a staggering statistic. So for Australian cybersecurity businesses to take full economic advantage of the industry's potential, we absolutely must think global. And right now, this is not something we're doing overly well here in South Australia. The Sector Competitiveness Plan report that Jason will talk to today finds only 29% of the state's cyber businesses are exporting their services beyond our borders. So to address this and other challenges facing South Australia's cyber industry, my department is working really closely with the AustCyber SA node, the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre, and congratulations, Matt, on your recent appointment as CEO of the centre, and good to see you. We're working with industry and research partners to develop a cyber industry development strategy for the state. This strategy will acknowledge the amazing work already underway here in the state, but also outline key strategies for building a stronger, more competitive cyber industry in South Australia. In the meantime, though, it's worth acknowledging some of the significant progress our state has made over the last 12 months. So we've welcomed the recent establishment of several South Australian cyber startup companies, including Starknex, Secure State and Fursi, and we continue to see the growth of more established business such as ZTech System, CyberOps Solutions and Fivecast. And I'm certainly looking forward a little later in the program to hear the panel discussion with Ben Potter from Fursi and Dwayne from Fivecast. We're also experiencing strong focus from multinationals, with global companies such as Accenture and Deloitte, and organisations such as Mitacorp all building a dedicated presence here in Adelaide. And that's absolutely providing opportunities for employment, career pathways and a willingness to work across collaborative projects to help lift cyber resilience across industry here in South Australia. MITRE, for example, has partnered with ZTech Systems to deliver Insider Protect, a set of data-driven, community-orientated service offerings to help industry and government organisations elevate their insider risk programs. This year, the department partnered with AustCyber and the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre and industry experts to deliver monthly cyber clinics, offering sole traders, micro businesses and SMEs free cyber advice. Hundreds of South Australian businesses have also attended cyber morning tea events hosted by the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre. To reach a broader audience in June, the SA Cyber Node also facilitated a virtual event where representatives from the Commonwealth Government presented on the most common risks facing the SME community. In addition to cyber risk mitigation strategies, that event really clarified, I think, for SMEs the immediate actions a business should take if they suspect they might be a victim of a cyber attack, including incident reporting to ASCSC. And because whilst the statistics on the number of cyber incidents is shocking, and we'll hear more about that today, with cyber attacks targeting Australia literally every 2 minutes, we understand due to underreporting that number's probably likely much higher. Over the last 12 months, South Australia has continued to foster partnerships with the private sector to deliver local cyber skills development programs. We've delivered a 12-month professional development program for teachers, supporting participants to teach cyber awareness in classrooms. We've rolled out the IBM Skills Build for Students program with IBM, which is an online program for South Australian high school students and teachers to develop digital skills over a 6-month program. We've launched a partnership with the organisation Financing of Return to Forte, and they're providing private capital to support 150 free digital tech scholarships for South Australian career seekers, including those seeking a career in the cyber industry. We've also partnered with Modus and Microsoft to deliver the Tech Start program, which develops a program to support women pursuing STEM careers in defence, space and cyber security through a boot-style training program. In August, our department also announced, as part of the skilled migration program, a stipulation cyber as a key area in which to attract and retain skilled migrants. So once again, I'm delighted to be here in what I have no doubt will be a really informative session. Once again, congratulate AustCyber and Stone & Chalk on the launch of the Sector Competitiveness Plan report for 2022 and the continued growth of the nodes across Australia. And I look forward to hearing from the panellists today and welcome their input on what we as a collective can and actually should aim to achieve over the next 12 months to strengthen and grow the nation's cyber industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. So the Sector Competitiveness Plan was, as we touched on at the top, actually very interesting and as we say, for probably a lot of the wrong reasons. The AustCyber business or side of the equation, Stone & Chalk and AustCyber have come together. It started in 2017 and the Sector Competitiveness Plan has been going for a few years now, but obviously with COVID in between, there a few things got, I think, thrown out. In a way, I thought everyone having to be forced to go online, work remotely, would have a positive impact and actually bring a lot more cyber to the forefront and hopefully bring up a lot more startups and things like that happening. We were sort of, I think, hoping that while everyone was in lockdown, that would produce a lot more, oh, here's a problem, let's solve that problem. It didn't tend to happen. In fact, in some ways or a lot of ways, the actual reverse happened. The reason we're running these events and going all around Australia is it really is time for people to get back in together and collaborate again. Having done 3 cyber startups prior to actually coming to AustCyber, one of the things you know is that it's a very lonely and difficult task to do. And sometimes you need someone to lean on. If it's not in your own team, to have and it's great to have a group of cybers here from South Australia together. I encourage you, obviously, as you probably already do, to work with each other, but also reach out to us centrally at AustCyber if we can help you in any way. And that goes to everyone online as well. If there's anything we can do, the experience we can tap into collectively. As we've seen with the recent attacks, we need to work together. This can't be a state-by-state thing. It needs to be a whole collective movement to actually bring together to stop these threats from. As I said, I was in Western Australia yesterday and in Joondalup, and obviously being from Victoria, and Jack had a good pot shot, which I appreciate. I'll try and separate the room here by saying who's a Crows supporter and who follows Port, and we'll get another fight going there as well. But one of the things with WA is obviously they shut down the borders, and that sort of was a good firewall for them and protected them very well from outside threats. But one of the things was that we can't do that with cybersecurity. We can't just go, I'll shut down a border and we'll stop people attacking a state. And the difference is even with how these things have been handled across state by state, with some having digital licences, like New South Wales change one number, and then you go somewhere in Perth and there's queues out the door to go and change your driver's licence if you've been exposed. Getting some uniformity across is what we're trying to do with AustCyber, is to bring everyone together collaboratively. There's so many separated different departments across the board. We need to bring everyone together. So part of what we're talking about in the plan here is an education piece. So for cyber professionals, if you want to get in the market, where do I go to actually go and find out where I can study? It's very disjointed, and one party saying, I'll do our study because that's the best one, and they're saying, now ours is better, we do this. And as a person coming in, that's a difficult part. We're going to have a job shortage of 3,000 people by 2026, and if that part's confusing, how are you going to attract more people to get in there? We need to make a pathway to make that easier. When we were looking at the numbers and breaking it down, the SCP, as I said, there is a QR code on there, completely safe QR code, obviously, we wouldn't do that to you. It was saying that the cybersecurity industry will contribute $2.4 billion this year to the Australian economy, which is actually a larger employer than the medical tech sector. But it's only slightly up, so it was $2.2 billion in 2020. So again, as I said, I thought after that COVID period that would boost up. I would expect a larger jump than that. It's not as big a sort of jump as what we expect, and that really needs to be boosted up. When you drill through some of the other numbers, it actually gets even more worrying. Andrew touched on that every 2 minutes. I agree with him. I think it's a lot more regular than that. So that was from our Cybers surveyed how regularly they're seeing attacks. Obviously, if you're one of those bigger organisations, maybe a telco or a big bank, you're getting hundreds of thousands of hits and regularly, so you're getting thousands a minute. And if you're someone like Telstra, that's going to be on an SMS front from smishing, you're going to have the phishing attacks through email servers, everything like that. Calls, imagine the amount of calls that they block. And banks have always, just because of the rules and regulations around them, have actually been sat on for a long time with regard to regulations as well. So they've been in the lead for a bit because they have to, financial institutions have been there, but the rest of Australia does lag a long way behind. And when we talk about employers, small to medium businesses in Australia, that's 97% employee of the population. We do tend to look at it, make a big song and dance about the sort of Optuses and Medibanks and those of the world, but what about all the rest of the people? You get a decent hit in a small to medium-sized business, and they wipe out 10, 20, 50 grand, that could be it for a business that's that small and running on very small margins. So we need to look after the whole of the Australian community. We've got to start teaching our kids younger. We need to look after the older community who have never been taught that. If we're going to teach it in schools, usually when you learn something to brush your teeth, to put a seatbelt on, all other safety measures, your parents teach that because they know how to do that. They don't know how to teach kids about cybersecurity, and it's not starting in school, so we need to make programs and actually start that there. That also triggers the pathway of how you can become a cyber professional later on. You start teaching that in schools and it makes it so that could be a career pathway for me as well. So we really need to look at it from an early age and start that pathway and show that there is a possibility. The other thing was the growth in Australia is really concerning too, 5.5% as an annual growth. Now, if we look at that internationally, 9.9% against our peers, which you'd rate similarly, is the sort of growth rate that we're tracking there. So well under on that growth rate or that return as well. So that's of real concern, especially when you look at countries like Canada's probably the most similar one we could find in the study that's probably closer. Commonwealth countries, similar head of population, similar size and spread. They get 300 times more funding than we do in Australia for cybersecurity. And Israel is the other one. Israel, only a country of 10 million people, have 30% of unicorns, so billion-dollar cyber companies in the world. There's places we can look that are doing it. It's not like we have to go, we've got to start from scratch. There's places we can look at and lean on to get some ideas on how we can do this. And we've got to start spreading our gaze a bit wider, because the attacks are all coming from overseas, and the solutions quite often are already overseas as well that we can tap into and look. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here, okay? So there's some steps we can follow. This was the other part too. So the government funding in 2019 was 9.8 million, and it's down to 7.5 million this year as well. So In this time where cyber attacks are increasing, we keep hearing the numbers, even from the threat report that was released by ACSC the other week was saying that it had gone from a report every 8 minutes down to 7 minutes. So the reports are increasing in amount of people, and it's probably only about 25% are actually reporting. There's 75% that goes unseen there. So we have that, and then our funding is going down. How does that work? Or why? That's just crazy. That's just crazy. So you think, why are we underinvesting in that? I know there's been the Red Spice program came out in May, and there's offensive capabilities being built in there. But again, we're starting a long way back. We're probably 5 years behind countries like the UK, and we need to really play catch up fast. It's probably in some ways 5 to 7 years, if you're realistic about how far behind we are. So there's some major steps we need to make, and leaps. We just can't walk forward. We need to sprint and jump forward in a lot of ways. The other part is that we're only sort of 2.1 of global demand with regard to cybersecurity. So this speaks to the whole local procurement thing. One of the things that struck me yesterday in WA, which doesn't seem to be the case from what I observed here in South Australia, is that locally the businesses in WA weren't getting any business from government procurement at a local level, and often from local business. So Red Piranha have gone off and they've opened offices in India and all different parts of the world, and they're looked upon as a bit of a beacon for cybersecurity in Western Australia, but not being used internally. So Adam Bennett was there yesterday and saying, imploring, like, please buy us. Why not buy local? Why do we have to go offshore to prove ourselves and then come back to get purchased? It's just crazy. We've got to look after our own cyber startups. If we're investing the money into them and helping them get going and get past that hardest part, how do we do the next step of that? And, through Stone and Chalk, in some cases startups are the easy part. To actually start up is easy. To scale up and grow and get to the other end of it is the difficult part. So venues like this, where you've got like the Stone and Chalk support network, which will start from nose to tail. You have an idea, get it to start up. That scale-up part's often the time where a lot of people fall over. So to have those things in place, tap into that. So we need to make it easy to know where businesses need to go here to get growth. Also then how they get to other parts of the world. From the export part, if we're talking from that, only 50% of cybers in Australia export, only half. And we heard the numbers before, about 29% of South Australian businesses. We need to make that easier as well. Part of AustCyber, if we're going to do a trade mission, we just don't want to take cyber businesses overseas and just say, here's a bunch of cybers, knock yourselves out. Look how good we are. We've got our banners around and we've got our people here and they're talking to people. But it's a waste of time. We've got to be more targeted. Take smaller groups more targeted, whether we've heard about, could be quantum or AI or whatever. Let's match up with what the VCs are looking for overseas. So we work closely with Austrade and parties like that. It's bringing everything together. Often I've been on trade missions when I've done startups and we go, who do we talk to? Do we talk to AustCyber? Do we talk to Austrade? Do we talk to our state government? And I think that a lot of times what's happened and what I've seen is that there's been a lot of money wasted on these tours and landing and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars with no real outcome. The person comes back from the business going, that was great, I saw how big America was. Okay, what did it do for your business? Nothing. You didn't get anything out of it, but we shook a lot of hands, spoke to a lot of people and felt good, but then we come back and we got no real result from it. So need to be more targeted and match up that part of it as well. So we're working with Austrade more closely to make sure when we land in these environments, and also you don't have to just go to America or to the UK or something like that. With where we're located and with the sovereign capability we have in Australia, in the Middle East and a lot of other parts of Asia, they're very keen to almost cookie cutter what we do here. Sometimes we feel we're over-regulated, but in other parts of the world that's looked upon quite favourably. So doing those sorts of things and realising that we actually have got some skills and benefits that a lot of other countries don't have, we need to tap into that as well. The jobs part, look, I think from when we get that education piece and everything, that's going to be an important part. But also, there's other people that have got skills in other areas that we can actually take and bring into cyber. So cybersecurity is not just someone coding and sitting in front of a computer. That image of a hood and people coding, all that sort of stuff, that's not what cybersecurity is. There's all different levels like GRC, so governance, risk and compliance. We had a crack at legal people, and why wouldn't we? But if you don't love doing that profession, go and do something like GRC. But the legal aspect of that, if you're studying it, not really get into it, the governance, risk and compliance part cross over there. I've seen accounting people too want to tap out of accounting and then graduate over to there. So I think if we're going to fill this jobs gap, we need to look a bit broader. It's the human psychology of cybersecurity as well is a big part of it. So we need people that understand the psychology of what a cyber attack is, because it's tricking you into doing something that you would just normally do. Finding out what your likes, wants, behaviours are, and then actually targeting you in that way. Having a broad range or a broad church of people actually getting cybersecurity. Yeah, we're talking about numbers here of being 3,000 as being the unders. I think it's going to be a lot higher than that. When we put this report together, along with Accenture, that was done over a period of time where we used AU Cyberscape and we've got AU Cyber Explorer. So we're looking at the market all the time to see what's happening. When we pulled those numbers from our cybers, which are nearing almost 300 now, that was pre these really big attacks happening. So that want for more people to work in cyber now, after other businesses see those attacks, what do you think they're doing? We need someone in cyber. We need to find someone in cyber. We're going to have the shortage. The skilled migrant part needs to be sorted out fairly quickly. We need to tap into that and bring more people into the country. This location, this spot, like in South Australia, who wouldn't want to come here? If I was someone living overseas wanting to be in cyber, let's make it more attractive for them to come here and make it easier for them to get here. They can then mentor the next generation. There's a big gap between here, like people with experience, and a lot of them are tapping out and getting out of the market at the moment, so we're losing a lot of people at that end. It's a big burnout industry too. It's a very stressful industry, so a lot of people are just getting burnt out and dropping out of the industry because of that reason. That's another part of support. Why would you want to do a job where you've got full stress? As an attacker, you just have to be right once. As a defender, you've got to be right all the time. That's millions of times in some cases you've got to be right. You get it wrong once though, they hang you, don't they? You got it wrong once, right? How many other jobs? Imagine being a meteorologist or working at the Bureau of Meteorology. Get it wrong every day. No consequence. Tomorrow it's going to rain. Oh, it didn't rain. Oh, too bad. If you're in cybersecurity, not too bad. You lose and you get hung. So we need to also move toward businesses that get attacked. So like we do when there's a bushfire or there's floods or there's an emergency, why when someone gets a cybersecurity attack do we all go, oh, back off, look what they did. Idiots, idiots. Well, run away from them, move toward them, help them, find out how it happened and learn the lessons from that, and then bring those out into the light so we can all learn. What happened to Optus, what happened to Medibank, what happened to anyone should actually be out in the open, and we should be working together to go, here's how it happened, here's the intrusion points, here's what... We've got to share and get collaborative. Mistakes is how you learn. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I just ask anyone, ask Tom or any of the team around here, every day. But you learn from your mistakes more than you do from your successes. And the mistakes you make in cyber have major consequences. And if we're talking about the startup community, we've got on the front line, we're going to do a chat very soon. But the mistakes you make in business is how you learn, how you get ahead. Usually you start a business out of saying, I see a problem that I need to fix, I'm going to start a business. And so look upon that favourably rather than hanging people all the time, especially in cyber, for the mistakes they make. The other part of it is the research and development part, like R&D grants or other methods of funding that we can use. Cybersecurity is all about R&D, but that's not easy to tap into. And any grant or any application you have to do, if you're running a small business, the time frame that it takes to do it and the confusion of that, there's certain businesses know how to fill in a grant application form. Good on them, and they just keep filling in forms and they keep winning awards and all that sort of stuff. That's their full-time job, it seems. But that's not suitable for a lot of businesses. There's someone who could be very techie and might not be good at going and applying for one of these grants and not know how to do it. We need to make that easier. More paint by numbers with that sort of thing. Also, just know when you're going on tour how you go on a tour. If we're going to take you away, here's how you do it. So these are things that we need to make easier. The access to money. And it's not just from government money, it's also from the larger corporates that we spoke about. Why don't they make it easier and have sandbox environments that you can go into? The reason Israel is so far ahead, one, from that compulsory service point of view, and they identify talent a lot younger, year 6, year 7, once they go there, they'll do extra time. Like normally service would be 2.5 years, I think it is. They do 5.5 years in cyber if you're in a red team. And off the back of that, the government will say, here, go make yourself a startup, and then the companies around in Israel will actually give them a go. So their telcos, their banks will say, come into our environment, let's test out and see how it goes and get instant feedback, and there you go, what do you got? 30%, for a population of 10 million people, 30% of billion-dollar cyber companies. So again, let's have a look at that. From the procurement part of it, I said government, yes. A lot of governments say we need 30% procurement of local stuff. With cybersecurity, a lot of times that tends to be services, but we need to get cyber products, whether that be a SaaS or a physical product. We need to support and purchase that sort of stuff for our cybers as well. That's a very key thing. And also with these trade outreach and delegations, as I said, matching up VCs with exactly what they're looking for. Don't go put someone in front of someone if they're looking for AI and say, oh, here's someone who's got a training awareness platform, do you want to meet with them? It's not something they're going to invest in, but it's wasting both ways. So we've got to be smarter how we get over there. And also with this attracting of local talent, as I said, there's identification programs we can do and things we can do starting in school. We should really start, we give kids access to all the online world without any blocks. Don't say, here's a strong password, have multi-factor authentication in place. Oh, there's an update, you better update as soon as it pops up there. We just let them go for it. I see parents just throwing phones in the kids' hands. Apple, God bless Steve Jobs, very intuitive and easy to use, but where does that kid end up going? Given an iPad and they're just sitting in a room for an hour by themselves. Who are they talking to? Where are they ending up? What's happening? So we need to get that in place as well. So that's enough about the Executive Competitiveness Plan. I did pick out some positives in there, I think, didn't I? What we can do. And that's where I'd like to bring the fireside chat in. What we're going to do is we're going to actually bring in Ben Potter. Paul is going to come back, and Dwayne Rivet as well, so VP Customer Success 5Cast, and Ben Potter, the founder of Fiercey, up, and we're going to have a fireside chat. Just welcome them to the stage and give them a warm hand, please.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Make yourselves comfortable. I'll just grab another microphone for you, Dwayne. Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to be doing this next segment because, as always, shining a light on our local cybersecurity capability and our local companies that are obviously on really strong growth trajectories is definitely something we should be celebrating. So welcome, both of you. Firstly, I'll make an introduction to you, Ben. Ben Potter is the founder and the CTO of Fiercey. Ben is a globally recognised leader in cloud security with a passion for helping not just organisations but actually individuals as well to help them solve those cybersecurity problems and combat what are the most challenging threats that they're facing. Obviously, a South Australian born and bred business, specialising in cloud cybersecurity, incident prevention and response, and working with clients not just here but all around the globe with a focus on AWS. And prior to Ben starting his company here in SA, Ben actually evangelised cloud security with AWS security standards during his 7-year tenure at Amazon Web Services, and was also one of the longest serving customer incident responders. So welcome, Ben.
Wow.
I would next also welcome Dwayne Rivet. Dwayne is the co-founder and VP Customer Success for 5Cast, another South Australian homegrown business. Dwayne has more than 20 years of experience working in research, commercialisation and innovative startup sector. And 5Cast is already a world-leading provider of digital intelligence solutions, used and trusted by leading defence organisations, national security organisations, law enforcement and corporate security and financial intelligence organisations all around the world, right here from South Australia. Dwayne leads the marketing, tradecraft and customer success functions of 5Cast and has played a key role in raising the venture capital funding and in fact relocated to Washington DC for the 2 years while they were growing the American arm of their business, but HQ is squarely right here in SA. So welcome, Dwayne. Thank you both of you for taking your time out to join us today at quite an early start. We've got coffee and breakfast, so I think we can all get through that. Just to set a bit of the scene, AustCyber's role, as most of you already know, but for those that don't, is about fostering and growing that national ecosystem of cyber capability, that sovereign capability that we need to be able to trust and depend upon in times of need. Making sure that we're globally competitive and that ultimately that sector can underpin the success of all other sectors across the industry and across the economy. And with growth at the heart and centre of today's event here and at the heart and centre of our SCP, I'd like to delve into with the both of you what that last 12 months of growth has looked like through what has been quite some challenging times throughout the last 12 months and understand what your organisations have experienced. As some of SA's youngest organisations out of our sector here in SA, you're growing your businesses during a global pandemic, obviously very challenging, and yet despite that, the success that we're seeing coming out of these two businesses is phenomenal. So we should definitely celebrate and acknowledge that today. So let's chat about those last 12 months, and I'm going to come to you first, Ben. The release of our SCP really articulated that although the growth has slowed, which Jason's mentioned, with 13% of cybersecurity firms in Australia being established since 2020, despite that lack of growth, it's quite an interesting statistic. But examples of that growth include your very own company. So, as well as others like StartNext, and we've got Secure State and a few more that came up in the last couple of years. But Ben, tell us what it was like creating a startup in the global pandemic.
Yeah, we started really in February this year, so I feel like we're after the pandemic. So, yeah, I think we wouldn't have done it without that community support.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of barriers to entry in doing a startup. Money, having the backing behind you. Fortunately, we were bootstrapped, so day one I was out there doing services work to bring money in. That wasn't a problem for us. It was more community support. And personal thank you, Paula, AustCyber, the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre. That gave us that community support to connect us with our customers to get that first revenue in the door. So, yeah.
I think that's a really important point, and it is a big shout out to the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre, because I think there's a point of difference for South Australia. Having a dedicated piece of infrastructure right here physically that you can tap into, alongside the likes of the hub here where you can work as a community, is certainly making a big difference, and definitely in the last 12 months we've seen that impact starting to come out and bubble to the surface.
Yeah. And even events like this, you always get connections and contacts. It could be the informal social meetups and that. We've gotten business out of them as well. So.
That's excellent. Thank you, Ben. Dwayne, I'm going to come to you next with this question. So we noted also from the SCP that exporting was severely hampered by COVID, and yet despite that, FiveCast has had significant growth in the global market despite that big challenge, picking up awards such as the SA Premier's Export Award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For advanced technologies, and also making finalists in AmCham's Alliance Awards as well. Congratulations there. But how did FiveCast actually overcome that barrier to export to be able to be being so successful in that space?
I think there were a few elements. You mentioned I moved to DC. I actually moved to DC just before the global pandemic. It's not like we set up the business to say, let's be global pandemic proof. I think luckily we were, because we're a cloud deployed SaaS program. I was already based in Washington, DC. We'd already made the decision. You mentioned the markets were in national security, defence, law enforcement. Obviously, in Australia we have 7 police forces. In the United States they have 18,000 police forces. They have 15 national intelligence agencies. The Department of Defence is amazingly larger and better funded than our Department of Defence. So we saw that as, okay, the US is the big market for us. When we can make $1 here, we can make maybe $15, $20 in the US. We can deploy it from here, which we do because we do it in the cloud. So we started getting that traction. We were quite small at the time. I relocated to DC and then got stranded there. There was a quick, when the pandemic hit, there was a quick kind of do I, don't I? Do I stay? Do I hunker down? And the decision was made that I'd hunker down, so I was lucky I was there, is the first thing. So part of it's luck. The other part of it was lots of the people we try and sell to were typically stuck in secure facilities. They all got sent home. They all had more time in their day. They were all more happy to take a Zoom meeting because they were more available. And they were also more available. It wasn't like, hey, you need to spend 2 weeks waiting to get clearance to come to our facility. It was more, yeah, I'll take a Zoom meeting. Can you meet tomorrow? And people were more open to maybe doing a deal in that situation. So it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and it's hard to know what would have happened if there wasn't a global pandemic, but we were relatively pandemic proof from the growth in that sector there. So one of the maybe drawbacks was hiring staff, not being able to meet people face to face. We did grow a US team while I was there. We grew it to about 10. But the other thing, just picking up on the SCP, is when I look at this, maybe it's my entrepreneur startup brain, when you're raising money, this is the kind of thing to say, look at this, I see TAM here, I see total available market, I look at that and think, look, I want a slice of that business, I want a slice of that sector, and maybe if there's one thing you can take away, because most of our industries, we're not selling fridges that we need to get parts in from China, we're selling cybersecurity solutions and capabilities that can be delivered virtually. So what we do is everything tech happens here in Adelaide. We have an office in Canberra, we have an office in DC, we've just opened an office in London. And the purpose of that office is to do business development, customer support, and some marketing. But all the money comes back here, and that's where we deploy from. So in a sense, they're producing money for us, and then we're spending it here on building our capability here.
That sounds fantastic. Definitely what we want to hear for SA's economy. Thank you, Dwayne. So the next question is about the last 12 months in terms of what's been a standout moment for both of you. This is perhaps a chance to reflect on, was there a specific moment where you just realised the business is actually heading in the right direction? I'm not too concerned here. What was your standout moment, besides winning awards, Dwayne?
For me, it was around September. So we've been profitable without taking a wage all year until September, where we were maintaining profitability and being able to take a wage. So that's, yeah, that'd be a standout for me. So
that's great. Great progress.
Yeah, I guess there's lots of metrics. We do put our name up for lots of awards. That's obviously part of that is just raising our profile for things like investment, follow-on investment. We've done a few things this year. We've gone over 100 staff. So we have about 75 in Adelaide and about 25 elsewhere. There's about 15 in DC. We've just established an office in London. So we have boots on the ground in the UK because we're just trying to replicate what we did in the US in the UK. The other thing that we're just about to take a new office, we've outgrown our current office, so we've taken the Channel 10 building on Hutt Street, so that's exciting. We're down there looking, walls are up and actually creating our own space, and we've actually been profitable as well. So obviously to do all that, we've done that. We haven't bootstrapped it. We got $4 million of investment 3.5 years ago, but since then we've basically lived off our revenues. We've also won a Defence Innovation Unit, a US DIU. I think I sat here and did a very similar panel session a little while ago on Defence Innovation Unit, but we were the first Australian company to win a DIU project, and that really accelerated our growth, our product development, so we're diversifying from one product to 3, setting up other offices, so the growth trajectory is just to really keep growing.
That's some really groundbreaking work there. Thank you so much. What does, without breaking anything too commercially sensitive and jump-starting any announcements you might have in your pockets, but what does the next sort of milestone look like for your businesses? What's the next thing that we can expect to see coming out of FIRSI and FiveCast?
Yeah, for us, so we have developed a threat intelligence product that is not only cloud-based but operates for threat intelligence feeds in the cloud. And that employs military tactics like decoys and things like that. So that's coming out soon. We've got some that's trialling that.
Excellent.
So yeah, stay tuned for that one.
Brilliant.
I think I mentioned some of the things
You
but
did,
already.
Just a few.
But yeah, I think for us, next 12 months, the new building, we are looking at raising more money out of the US as well. So we'll keep you posted on that one. The new building is exciting. And the other thing is, at the moment, our UK office probably just needs to start spinning up because at the moment our revenues are about 2/3 from the US and about 1/3 from Australia, a little bit elsewhere. But we're doubled down on the UK now, so we're going to have 6 people based in the UK. That's about half our US team. So the expectation would be to replicate what we did in the UK and start to see a lot more revenue come out of that market.
Fantastic. So some big journeys ahead and lots of things to still achieve. Just jumping back to the SCP, there was 3 key reasons that plan outlined as to the rationale for why the growth has actually slowed. Those being the lack of export access, which Jason mentioned before, also the workforce shortages that Jason touched on, and also that limited startup support. Through those journeys you've just described, did those 3 reasons really resonate? Seem to be obviously having no shortage of staff access, but in terms of the other reasons, did they resonate with you for your journey?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The startup support wasn't, as I mentioned, we were great community support. It was more just getting, we were lucky in getting insurance, like professional indemnity and cyber insurance. So I had to have like personal reference checks to get that insurance over the line. And I know other startups have been challenged and haven't been able to get off the ground just because of the insurance. So it would be good to see some sort of backing or support from both government and insurance brokers and agencies. Also legal support, just getting legal advice. It's really expensive to get good contracts drafted, $1,000 to $3,000 a contract to get that drafted. The online legal advice and that's all useless. It's terrible. Or the online SaaS products are absolutely terrible. So those 2 things would have really helped us.
And those would resonate with any startup, not just in this particular sector, but certainly if we can solve that problem, we're solving it for the masses, not just for the cybersecurity sector.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Dwayne?
Yeah, we've tried to capitalise. We're an Oz industry poster child in a sense. We spun out of a CRC, so we're funded by Oz Industry through the CRC's program, which really gave us a leg up. That was almost $100 million all in from the federal government. So we ran a 5-year CRC. We set up the company about halfway through the CRC, and we got to, I call it live with our parents. We were like teenagers in our pretend business, living with our parents, mooching off them and using their resources. So by the time we actually had to move out of home in mid-2019, we already had a team of about 15. we'd been able to use all that time to develop. So we went and picked up a accelerating commercialisation, sorry, my brain's going back to many years ago, accelerating commercialisation grant. We got support from Tech NSA back in the day. Our first, I think we got about $50,000 grant to go and start doing these trips to the US. So the CEO, Brenton Cooper, and I started in the start of 2018, just going to the US, using our existing connections in the Australian market to have those initial meetings. And that's where we ended our first anchor customer in the US, which was the driving factor to say, okay, now we've got this customer, we can double down on this market, because I know that if that's one customer, we can get other customers like that. And so our US revenue growth curve has over the years surpassed our Australian growth curve, because the Australian's longer, but it's got to a lower level, whereas the US has really grown up. So then we've just kept doubling down. Let's put in more salespeople, let's put in more customer support. I don't have to explain why they've got a funny accent when they're doing a demo. They just, and if you go to our website, everything's very American, and we use Zs in our spelling and these sorts of things, or Zs in the spelling. So when people look at it, they don't think it's not covered in kangaroos and whatever. So when people go and see it, they see global company, and then when they meet with our people, they are meeting with Americans, but then we're really just delivering that capability from here. And just the one additional thing I'll pick up on that with AUKUS and the Five Eyes Alliance in the national security space, and we talked about Israel before, one of our biggest competitive advantages is not being Israeli in the national security space, and it would be exactly the same in cybersecurity. They're going to be much more comfortable with an Australian company walking to a US agency than an Israeli company walking to a US agency, because the Israelis are very good at tech, but they're also very good at espionage. You have to remember that. It literally, some of your competitors might be Israeli, so you could be saying, oh, we're Australian. And they kind of love Australians in the US as well.
I guess that's where your customer base really comes down to being really critical when you're going out to those new markets, being able to demonstrate your capability that you've already achieved in other customer bases in different parts of the world. So definitely a key area to focus on if you're just starting out is accessing that first customer. We have got, I guess, one last question here for both of you. We've talked about the barriers such as that insurance issue. We've talked about the problems around getting legal advice, the issues around trying to capture that first customer. In terms of future growth, what else do you need besides what we've already talked about? And if you could just make a wish for what that could be, what could we grant for you? What would it be?
I'll go first. I'd say free marketing.
Yep.
And we can pick up a lot through connections, like I'll be chatting to you after. So you can introduce me to. So I think, free marketing, that ties in with the whole export. Providing software as a service product is not something that you export, that you need warehouses and distribution. You just need marketing.
100%.
Yeah, and just people. And people is challenging. Yeah, so far we've had good experience and good growth from getting graduates and training them up, because graduates are really passionate about learning and less passionate about getting equity in the company. Yeah.
What about yourself, Tom?
Yeah, I think just to pick up is one of your other questions about talent acquisition is probably one of the harder things. Like when you want to hire, there's just not a massive talent pool here. One of the things we do is we have relationships with all 3 universities in the computer science area, and maybe I'm giving away our secrets and you'll go do this too, but don't do that. It's a terrible idea. Finding the best students, bringing them in for paid internships. We get a chance to try before we buy, so to speak. We'll often give them a part-time job in the 4th year of their study. They'll be finishing their study at University of Adelaide, and they'll be working for us. So they're not washing dishes or working in a cafe. They're working with us, and we've captured them. We're making sure our new building is like a Google in Adelaide, video game machines and these sorts of things to attract. You come to our office, there's a bunch of young guys mainly.
I've been, it's fantastic. Foosball tables, everything.
Exactly, and black hoodies. It'd be great, more women we struggle to find women in the more technical areas. We're obviously focused on it, but as is Atlassian and AWS and the big ends of town. So that is tricky, but I'll just maybe pick up on the marketing thing. Marketing, years ago, before we got a marketing director, Brenton and I did marketing. We did a LinkedIn post every now and then, or wrote a white paper, or did something. We now have 4 or 5 in our marketing team, and it's invaluable to build up, because what you can do is build up thought leadership. You can build up stuff that actually, so we try to build up content that our customers actually want to read. It's not a hard sales pitch. It's one we released recently. It was 1 Week in Iraq, which was written by one of our guys in the US based on his experience in the military doing intel in Iraq. And we try to do that to build up our street credibility and have this body of knowledge, so when people are scrolling through LinkedIn and they're seeing our posts, they're actually seeing something they want to latch onto, not just a sales brochure, something that really engages with them. So I think thought leadership and being seen as being a credible, trusted source before, hey, I want to sell you some software, because at the end of the day, everyone's job is selling software in my company. And I don't know, a couple of pieces that I think about is you just always have to move quickly towards the target, and I don't know, we were talking about it before, I think you always need to be focused on the end game, and the end game is selling your software, because that's what pays the bills, that's what pays everyone's salary, and it's reminding everyone in the business that their job is to sell software. To build software that people want to buy, to market software, to make people want to buy it, to literally go sell the software, to make sure the customers can use the software and love the software. This is what customer success is, because we're a SaaS company. So my job is low churn, higher renewals, upside, referrals. And we talk about lifetime customer value, because it's not just a 1-year subscription. It's, hey, how can we get this going for 5 years?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Some really good insights there. I think we might have to get you back for customer success journey workshops here at Stone and Chalk for the residents. Thank you both so much, Ben and Dwayne, for all of your insights, and really some great things to celebrate out of South Australia that we've already seen you both achieve through your organisations, and hopefully lots more still to come. So please, everybody, join me in thanking Dwayne and Ben.
That was a great session. Some good insights in there. And the diversity piece as well. We talk about women and the neurodiversity piece we've covered this week as well. So diversity comes in many forms. The expert panel, I'll jump straight into it because I think we're slipping on time a little bit. I just want to make sure, because I'm sure you have to get back to work, that we finish on time here at 10:30. So I'll just bring the panel up and we'll jump straight into it. So first of all, we've got Professor Daniel Florini. Hello. Sorry if I get... Yeah, it's good. Who's co-founder of CyberOps, so please welcome him to the stage. Grab a stool anywhere. Alex Heinrich, Customer SA Northern Territory for Cyber CX. Yvonne Sears, co-founder of ISD. And Will Luca, the CISO at South Australian Government. I thought we better jump into it because there's still plenty of food there so they can eat, but we just want to make sure that we get through. Has everyone got a microphone there? Yep, thank you. Pass it down. Thank you. A bit of sharing might be required there. So first of all, just want to ask what's been the standout moment from your perspective for the last 12 minutes, which has demonstrated growth in the industry? So do you want to kick off?
12 minutes or 12 months?
12 minutes, yeah, because we've got not much time. It was a great talk, that one.
It's fantastic.
Have you looked at the questions already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should have done the same.
Hey, look, it's a really good question, right? A lot's happened in the last 12 months, and I think we've touched on, but both in what you covered and what two gentlemen were just moving through, a whole bunch of activities happened in the last 12 months. If we could take a lens from what's happened through COVID and post-COVID, and it's fantastic for us to all be here and getting back together as a group of professionals trying to solve this problem. If we took an information security lens, there's been some standout moments, either positive or negative. If we take the negatives in terms of those recent breaches that are happening, from my perspective, I'm seeing business leaders, boards and executives finally have that moment when they realise the value of their information and the damage that can be done, not just at a business level, but at a societal level or an individual or human level if we get this stuff wrong, which is important. That's a big motivator. Regulation helps, business outcomes help, but I think that's really come home in the last month or so, which is really important. If I look at it from an industry perspective, that the growth of skills, so I see that challenge around skills, the skills shortages in the industry as a real opportunity. I've gone looking in non-traditional pathways for that talent to bring in to help solve this problem. And South Australia has some phenomenal talent.
Yeah, what have you done there? Because CyberSex has employed over 1,000 people now.
Yep.
And that's a lot of people. Like, we're talking 3,000 for the whole of Australia till 2026. How are you doing that? Because that would be of interest, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, really good question. A couple of different ways. One way was to grab the existing talent that we could early to create, a kernel to build around. What we're also doing is we've built an academy to attract that potential, and we've gone looking in different kinds of ways now. You have to invest in unlocking potential. If the experience isn't there, or it's not what it should be, or it's too expensive, then and the gentlemen were talking about this before, you can go and find it. You've just got to invest time and effort to teach them everything that you know. And my experience, and a few people will probably agree with this, is that next generation of talent coming through, they are faster and better at this than what we ever were. And if you make that investment, you get that return on it. And then if you do that really well, there's a leadership element to that whole problem. Attracting, growing and retaining talent, you need good leaders in this industry, not just good information security practitioners and not just good business leaders, but good leaders, because how else are you going to inspire people to join you and stay and go on that journey outside of just paying more and more money, which is a real challenge. So we've gone about it in a bunch of different ways. I wouldn't say we've got it nailed.
You want to give away some trade secrets?
For me, if we're talking about a positive spin of what's happened in the last 12 months, that is. We are building jobs collectively in South Australia and elsewhere. That's a great outcome in what is otherwise a complex threat problem, which is a bit uncomfortable and a bit insidious.
That's great. You've got a microphone down there. Do you want to just jump on this one as well?
Yeah, I wanted to jump on the back of that and say that the kind of market response to the skills problem has been really impressive in terms of seeing large professional services firms. CyberSex is one of them, but there are multiple that have pretty impressive things around addressing the skills shortage. Now, obviously, they've got a vested interest to do that for themselves, but the sector as a whole benefits. I think most of the big four have done it. There's the PwC Skilled Services Hub. Deloitte have done work there. There's multiple, and I think that's really, it shows that there's a huge demand there, but it also helps the industry as a whole. South Australian government has done traineeships that have been there's been huge demand there from people wanting those jobs. So I think we've got to look at that. We can't just keep churning through the same experts that have been in the field they've been in the field for 30 years when the field isn't that old, but it's those sorts of things. We've got to actually start growing it, and I think the sector is starting to do that, and that's certainly been a change over the last 12 months.
Yeah. So, Yvonne, did you want to jump on that?
Yep, so I think the most exciting thing that's happened over the last 12 months is greater focus on legislation and standards. So those of you that know me, I'm very passionate about privacy. So to see the privacy reform finally coming through and getting some traction and maturity and real attention, plus the changes to ISO 27001, 27002, having that focus and now privacy is within its title, I think we can start seeing some real attention to data protection. So from the UK, we have the Data Protection Act, which is, when I talk to people about privacy, they say privacy's dead, long live privacy. The information's out there, so what's the point of trying to reel back the horse is bolted sort of thing? But if we can actually focus the attention on data security, why are you collecting the information in the first place if you don't know what you're collecting, where it's residing, and how long you're keeping it for? Then how can you protect it? So I think this is coming to fruition from the latest incidents that are happening today.
Yeah. And Derek, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks. I think from our perspective, we've really started leaning into, we do space, cyber and also defence work. And what we're finding is that leaning into that conversation and having those honest conversations, we're becoming less specifically cyber. We're actually becoming business advocates with cyber, industry leaders with cyber. So actually being able to be with the business rather than just being a cyber augmentation or approach to the generic cyber problem. So we're finding that's where we differentiate ourselves. But because we've got largely an engineering focused organisation, we look at hardware, we look at software, we look at people and process. We do a little bit of GRC, absolutely, it's part of what we do, but a lot of the engineering expertise, if you like, comes from understanding what threat intelligence means against a particular solution or a particular outcome for that customer. So it's non-traditional business analysis. It's actually about understanding what matters and then aligning the risk assessment or the risk quality statement against what would hurt that business or what's currently occurring. So, discussions around things like threat intelligence and those sorts of things, absolutely. It needs to be there, and what we try to do as much as possible is understand what that actually means to the bottom line, what it actually means to the business processes, and obviously the services and products that customers are trying to put out. So that's where we've become successful, and we continue to grow in our areas. We're all defence cleared staff within the team, and being able to step into an organisation quickly and say, hey, we're here for you. And if there is an incident, being able to say that there's that level of credibility. The Defence Industries Security Program, the DISC program in Australia, has helped a heap with that. We also help SMEs build that basis, taking traditional old metal bashing organisations that might want to supply into defence and actually helping them move as well. So once again, there's a change of industry. We're going towards who we can sell to and why we can sell to them from our perspective, but that's also what our customers are doing as well. They're trying to keep the doors open. So understanding what that connective tissue is and how cyber connects into what governance looks like and what people and process looks like within an organisation, and understanding that is really where we're heading.
Right. Well, it sounds like it's been a good 12 months over here. So what more can industry do together to address the key barriers across industry in the normalisation of cyber into everyday business? You touched on that just then, Derek. Anyone else want to jump on? You've still got the microphone on if you want to jump on, and then we can pass them down again.
Yeah, sorry. Can you...
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying, what more can industry do together to address the key barriers across industry? So to normalise, for cyber security, so inside everyday businesses.
Yeah, I think within everyday businesses, I think as an industry we can maybe get away from the core focus on essential 8. It's more than just 8 things companies need to focus on. So I think in way of normalising information security, I'm a traditionalist as well. Cyber seems to become a tech focus, but it's a sexy word, is to really get businesses to think about their risk profile. What information, where do they sit in the world? How do they operate that exposes them to these different types of threats?
And Alex, do you want to...
Yeah, I mean, there's a
there's
a range of things, I think, so that's a great point. I think increased use of intelligence into decision-making in a threat-based environment, lessons learned in the kinetic space, it's really important for trying to deal with complex adaptive threats, which is why we're probably seeing those kind of platforms or methodologies really come to the fore. I think that's important, that's one. 2 would be incorporating cyber as a partnership or a journey over a longer term, because it doesn't go away, and we're trapped in this project point in time looking at the problem through a straw. It's more than that. There's a whole range of capabilities that you need to bring to bear at the right place and time to help disrupt this problem. And you've got to do it really efficiently and effectively, because it's an infinite problem with finite resources in business. So I think closer working together to do that. And if I touch on the collaboration piece, because it is such a broad spectrum, information security, there's a whole lot of opportunity for various businesses as specialists to be very good at certain areas. It's synchronising or bringing that together, either in your own business or as individual businesses. There's a lot of opportunity to do this stuff better, just by passing the baton across different specialisations to go and solve the broader problem.
Excellent. So he's ready to go.
This question? Or?
Yeah, I just think generally, for everyday businesses, we often talk about, say, from a Stone and Chalk perspective or cyber, that we look to build in cybersecurity from the start. A lot of companies, unfortunately, didn't start with it embedded. So now, as a sort of bolt-on, how can you actually build that into an everyday business? I know it's a bit of a challenge because we're all busy, but now it's so important. What would you give as advice to everyday businesses?
Yeah, it is a difficult one. I think the key part you've touched on there is getting it in early and involving it in the conversations for everything. So in government, we've got a big focus now on having that conversation early with the procurement and contract process, so that with our contracts area, with our procurement people, with our legal people, we're having that conversation about the importance of supply chain risk management from the beginning. Because you might be outsourcing a service or something, but you're not outsourcing your risk. So bringing in that conversation very early across all those different fields is so important.
Yeah. Jerry, do you have it?
Yeah, so some of I think there's a bit of a phased approach there. If you're going to start up, then start with something that's actually already secure. So go to the Office 365 lockdown, Essential 8 type environment, or the Google one, or create something that can literally be taken off the shelf and managed on your behalf. Don't spend your time, automate the hell out of all your systems as much as possible to get your business going. Make sure that and that's part of involving or getting security right from day one. The small to mediums and ones they move into the enterprise, then trying to consolidate, if you've been running for a while, reduce the security spread. It reduces the ability to be able to leak stuff. People that attack surfaces, all those sorts of things come into it. It reduces the stress on your own staff, the amount of 24/7 requirements you need to keep things going and monitoring and management. And then you can really amplify the tech that you've actually got to then provide the protections. Really effectively use the threat intels and industry knowledge to really target the actual things that matter to your business now. Don't spread too thin too early. So we see so many older and newer companies that are just basically buying every shiny toy on the planet, and it's just completely opening up their ability to be abused. And not just the not putting 2FA in and those things, sorts of things, but having stuff in different countries, not knowing if the credibility of that business is any good, and you're putting all your family jewels or your customers' sensitive data into those environments and not managing. Surely, they're good at it, been running for 100 years. Well, that software as a service or that bricks and mortar organisation may actually be quite rubbish at your own at security, or haven't progressed in the same way that you expect. So that's typically our advice, is trying to reduce the noise and also the ability to be able to be abused by not using every product and choosing really solid ones day one.
It would be good. We touched on it yesterday in WA about with all the Australian cyber businesses, sort of connecting them to a collective service to go in one hit. You spoke about, and we asked about the marketing part, and doing 3 cyber subs as well. Going solo style all the time and trying to do that rather than a collective front, when you can do a holistic solution everyone could tap in together, would actually make it a lot easier for everyone, and use that shared knowledge to actually get into some of these businesses and make them feel a bit more cybersecurity to a degree, where you bring a whole heap of companies together, a whole broad spectrum that you can go in with as a solution. I think broader that we can, as AustCyber, and assist in that way in any way we can to try and bring all that together and bring a united front into a business with a holistic solution. So what challenges do you see, or do you think the industry is going to face in the next 12 months, especially given the last couple of months and while we've got people's ears wide open and eyes as well? What do you think we're going to be looking at for the next 12 months?
I think as an industry we've got a challenge to maximise the opportunities out of the current harm that people are feeling. I think if we continue to spruik harm and the risk and the threat, then we've actually lost an enormous opportunity. An opportunity for change, an opportunity to demonstrate that cybersecurity is an enabler. There's the classic thing that I'm sure everyone in this room has heard, that brakes on the car aren't there to stop it, it's there to allow you to go fast. That's the sort of stuff that we should be pushing as an industry, and I would argue that South Australia is the best place in Australia to do that, because we have industries where cyber is a clear horizontal across all of them to enable it, so space and defence and places like this.
No, it is a bit of a poster child, so that's a fair call. I just want to have a crack.
The focus of the question was really around challenges, right? More of the same. We're seeing the rise of nation-state threat actors operating in different kinds of ways to disrupt democracies. I think we're going to see more information operations and those kind of flow-on effects that come from it, which we don't typically focus on too much in the commercial world. I think we're going to see more of that. I'm really concerned about things like undermining the confidentiality of the healthcare system and what effects that has in a flow-on effect from the decisions.
The amount of data out there now, Australian data.
And whether people present and report health issues. I'm concerned about those challenges. Identity theft, that's a problem that keeps on giving about 10 years after it happens. These are not things that us really worry about too much. These are individual or human problems, so I think that's going to continue. The rest of the challenges, I think you can spin them around into opportunities. There's plenty of good opportunity for technical or service-driven businesses to get after this and solve it. I think Australians are very good at solving problems. South Australians are very good at solving complex problems in an affordable, value-driven way. So I think there's a lot of opportunity amongst the challenges that we've got for the audience in the room and the businesses, and also the people that might draw on those services from those businesses, particularly if we buy sovereign capability. Buy sovereign capability or we're wasting our time.
Anyone else want to have a crack?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think some of the real challenges we now have as an industry is being able to multiply ourselves when we're very thin on the ground already. With more and more businesses becoming aware and having that sudden realisation, we process personal information as well, and it's not my information, it's my neighbour's information. Taking some accountability on that, and how I think we're going to have a real challenge in how we can, but there's also opportunity in how we can work together and collaborate and actually get out there more to make some real differences and change across all industries and all sizes of businesses.
Yeah, I think the biggest one I can see, and we're dealing with it at the moment, is all these data leaks that we've had, and people just going back and actually trying to look at why that data leak might affect their business and also their customer. So really leaning into that conversation, the information is out there, it's freely available on so many dark web portals, it's crazy. People are just sharing this stuff left, right and centre on torrents. So it's out there. So that's the realisation of saying, what does your service desk validation actually look like? You know, what does your customer service validation look like against that customer? And actually starting to reflect on your own business. You may not have caused the data breach, but what you depended upon to validate who your customer is now being compromised. You know, it is out there. So the scammers and so forth, and the increased amount of scam calls we're receiving just in the last few weeks are just crazy. The spam, of course, all those sorts of things. But introducing some of those resilience, things like DMARC for spam reduction in organisations. People that says that are saying...
DMARC's not that hard to do, but it's just not that well known.
I agree, and so it's literally scripted if you want to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
even out of Office 365.
Yep.
It's just, you just follow the bouncing ball and you've implemented it. Same thing with Google, same thing with any AWS service. So really easy, quick wins. And we just need to, once again, lean into the conversation, say, what does my business rely upon? Who is my customer? And what, not just data, but how do their business operates, and actually have that conversation.
Yeah.
And we're not doing enough of it.
Yeah, no, good. And this one I'm actually interested in because from an AustCyber we looked at a national sort of strategy. So we're setting up like a full national node network, and we like to feed into the states and then get some benefit out that we can share across the board. And didn't just say flippingly because I'm here, SA is ahead in a lot of ways, but what challenges do you see which differ from other states and territories here that we could learn lessons from nationally, and how can we help, say in particular, with other ways tapping back into the national network?
Look, I'll jump straight in there. Look, I think one of the biggest things that we see is having that broader conversation in a respectful way. Yeah, when we go and sell to other regions, the US and other places, they're pretty open, but if you sell into the likes of Japan or into other countries such as those, they've got the same thing. They're trying to export. So what's the value proposition you're actually trying to bring to the table? And we find the same thing from within South Australia going to other states, and when people come in, just buy our product because it's good. We're trying to sell the same thing. So what we do is we actually try to self-feed a lot within the state. I think we need to start stretching out into other states in Australia and look at those opportunities, uniqueness into other regions as well. And likewise embrace the same from other states and also the same from overseas. We don't seem everybody's a competitor, okay? And we need to get over that a little bit, but also lean into the conversation saying, okay, what's a partial integration into that product and service? What does that look like? And start opening up. And that's, I feel, and I think you guys may agree, the previous speakers around, that's the way we start integrating into the global marketplaces. We're adding value into the entire ecosystem, not just the product or service we started with.
Yeah, I think that's true. Cyber, more than anything, needs to be sharing and be more collaborative rather than holding the cards close to the chest and trying to block everyone out. I know when we started Cyber, John and I were because it was in infancy, sort of 2017 when we started, we were very much trying to help anyone else that was in a similar space or even different space to try and help them get up. We've got to try and bring each other up all at the same time and share what we learn as we go, because it is very new, and the more we can share and the more contacts, like you're saying, oh, can you introduce me here or there or to anyone? It's all about that, and we just got to all help each other and be more collaborative rather than trying to cut each other's throats. It's not going to get us anywhere. So anyone else want to jump in? Everyone, you ready to go?
I'm just agreeing with some companies might be a bit gatekeepy.
Yeah.
And we need to embrace the difference and diversity that we have in our knowledge, our background experience, and diversity in services, and work together and just get the job done. And I think, I'm particularly feeling that on occasion as a small business here in Adelaide. And it's quite interesting and encouraging to hear the need for more collaboration and how we can help each other on this journey.
Yeah, and I've had, since we've been doing this, a lot of people reaching out, especially through LinkedIn, like direct messaging from days, but I encourage that for anyone here. I'm sure they're open to it. Anyone I know in the industry, if you reach out, ask a question, if you need some help, to me or anyone here or you've seen across the week, we're always happy to help. Had a young guy in university yesterday come up to me and say, look, I'm doing a startup, I'm in university. Let me know whatever help you need, I'll get you connected with anyone. I know that anyone in cyber in Australia are always happy to help. So just reach out anywhere, online, in the room here, come and see us. Message us after if you don't catch us here. And all of us here are always happy to help. Let's bring the whole industry up as a whole. But yeah, so SA, I'd like to hear just Will, and I'll come back to you, Alice, if that's all right.
I think SA specific, I think we've got the great foundations of something here, and we need to continue to build on that. Lift our eyes around what could be done in South Australia with the investment we've got, but build on that significantly. We've always struggled as the smaller cousin or smaller sibling to places like Victoria and stuff, and I think we've just got to move past that. Some of that brain drain stuff has been reversed and the moving interstate to get a job is being reversed, but we need to continue to build on that. Look at the global companies that have a presence here. Look at the great small companies that are here that have, built from here, remain here. You can do it here. You don't need to go interstate, and I think we all benefit. I know this is Australia specific, but I'm going to be parochial South Australian and say you can do it here. Yeah.
Go for it.
I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. It's why not South Australia, really?
Yeah. Now you've got to rip your shirt open and do the South Australian. Super South Australian. Alice, you want to top off?
Yeah, look, having gone on a startup journey in South Australia and now connected to a national enterprise, from a market perspective, there's less discretionary spend in South Australia to spend on this problem, which forces us to be very good at it. And I think that's the real strength of South Australian workforce or capability more broadly. And the second element is, and I touched on it earlier, is the potential, the workforce talent and potential in South Australia is actually incredible. It's out there and they're looking for new and exciting challenges to do. And I think we've done a lot of effort, and you can see it around here, to draw attention to that and make sure that we get after the opportunities. And we've seen some of the businesses that have been successful doing that and are now world class or taking on world leaders. I'm pretty proud of that, and I think that speaks highly of the South Australian approach to getting after this difficult problem.
No, it's a well-run state, very intelligent people, and it is true that people are coming back here because it was people. If I was ever recruiting, I'd always look at South Australia. If someone came out of SA, it was like, yeah, you're top of the pile sort of thing. So it is true that it's actually coming back here, and people want to live in Victoria at the moment, anytime really after the whole lockdown, and they're jumping over here as well. So I don't think I'd ever barrack for the Crows or Port. I'd still come over here. Yeah. And just to, that'll come. I've got too many teeth, I think, to be a Port Adelaide supporter. So I'm just going to just close off just for one final thought from me, and then we'll go to some Q&A. If there's one thing in the industry or sector could put right or fix, what would you like that to be?
Really good question. From a business leadership perspective, it's just understand you can't ignore this problem. It's critical to the success of your business in the sense that it can bring you down if you don't get it right. It's not something that is shouldn't be an afterthought. Have this integrated into your business, and at the very top of businesses, that leadership needs to take this seriously or no one else will. Please do that.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Excellent.
Speaking as a bootstrapped business owner.
I noticed you're putting food in your handbag down there. She's seriously bootstrapped.
I'm serious. Yeah. We've just celebrated our 5th year anniversary here in Adelaide. We're Adelaide-based. But it would be great to have a bit more proactive identification of what funding is available and what grants are available longer than 2 weeks out of submission date would be wonderful.
Yeah, they're hard to find, aren't they? That's what I found as well. It was
they're
like,
really hard.
Surprise, it's up, and we've got to fill it out. We've got 3 hours to do it. Like,
Yep. So in overall, to support growth and innovation, we just need to have that information readily available to us so we can encourage others to do the same. Come on this journey. It's not an easy journey, but certainly funding would would help.
Procurement is also the other hard part, isn't it? To go through the procurement process.
Exactly, and understand that and all the legalities that go with that as a startup business. You learn as you run. You don't know what you don't know, and having a team around you to actually point you in the right direction and say, hey, have you heard about this availability, or have you spoken to such and such? I think that's a great way forward, and I'm hoping to hear a lot more.
Well, you're in the right place.
Awesome.
Derek, and then we'll finish with Will.
Look, I think I'd like to see that it isn't just cyber, it's actually the way we do business.
Yep.
That's an industry, it's an industry thing. This is proper risk assessments within a business, and there's a component of cyber in
like
every
school,
conversation.
100%. Literacy, numeracy,
Exactly.
Yep.
So that goes right through, it goes to critical
security.
infrastructure. When your procurement process happens, cyber has to be part of the checklist. You're making sure that when you go to market...
As we talked about VC before, you go to VC, security.
Where is it? Yeah. Even when we engage with suppliers, how do you fit within our cyber structure? Are you similar to us or not? Should we deal with you at all on that basis? It has to be part of the narrative.
Because a lot of these hacks are third, so it's a company, but they've come through, like I think Bunnings had one from where the click and collect, third-party risk come in, that's how it got in. So.
But I think just making it part of the way we do business, rather than always as you said earlier, it's not an added-on extra. It's not a requirement from regulatory specifically. It's the way we do business because you're trying to keep the doors open.
Mitigating risk.
100%.
I think the key thing for me is let's not use this moment with cyber on the front page to be the I told you so moment. I think that we've actually lost a massive opportunity if all we do is just continue to hammer that. Let's make sure that this is a conversation about the opportunity of doing this.
Absolutely. And that's what I think, the positive, all the news stories, they want the negatives, don't they? And no one's talking about you could do this or have multi-factor authentication or here's some things you can do basically at home right now to fix this problem. So, yeah, that's great. So there's a couple of Q&As here, but most of them honestly are about Jack, how great he was, and he was great. So he dominated. He should actually just become our poster boy for cybersecurity, I think. I'm sure we could put the didgeridoo in there somehow. Maybe shoulder surfing, you just hit someone over the head with the didgeridoo. Yeah, awesome to hear Jack, and watching from Virginia in the US. Great speakers, love the passion, energy, watching from Hobart, Tassie. Okay, we've got one here. So what is the opinion of the panel for expanding outside of major cities to assist the industry? This is a great question. There's cheaper commercial spaces and access. Second part, what can be done to leverage talent in other areas of Australia to address the skills shortage? So two parts. So one of the things we're looking at, and so doing this national node network, one of the conversations we have is to say in Darwin, the Northern Territory, a third of the state being Indigenous and a lot of outposts. And the way you've got to deliver cybersecurity there is going to be a lot different. A lot of postpaid phones and different situations. You can't teach in the traditional way. So there's aspects there. We're looking at how do we do little pods or little ways of getting out there. Same thing in northern Queensland and in WA. But how do we get the community that sits outside these major cities? Because cybersecurity, as we said before, knows no borders. It's not going, I'm just looking at postcodes in the CBD. It's looking around all of Australia. So what can we do there to assist industry that sits outside of our capital cities?
Look, I've just recently had some really good chats with regional advisors, both in WA and also in SA&T, less so over your way.
Yep, no,
but there is a real need and a want for skills and also to prevent a lot of the young people coming into the cities. So there's an ability, when we first designed the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre, it wasn't about South Australia. It never was about South Australia. It was actually about creating a capability that can be used nationally and globally.
Yep.
The same sense, reaching into the regions and having these common areas where people can go, I need to know or want to know about cyber, and how do I connect into that larger ecosystem? Once again, something that AustCyber could assist with, and Paul, I know, has done a lot of regional stuff in AI and a lot of around the South Australian regions, is reaching into those areas and actually setting up the connective tissue back to the population centres.
Paul likes driving, so we're happy to send her out.
Here we go.
Anywhere around South Australia, she's open Northern Territory, Northern WA. Loves driving.
But the problem that we've got is annuity, okay? So the continuity of that conversation, and it's not just about throwing a bucket of money or just saying, hey, we've just put a poster up someplace. So how do we continue to pull and draw upon as an ongoing service? And that's always been the challenge. And then those centres will grow, and it will allow the people to contribute both directions to this broader cyber but also risk-based conversation.
As we know, it's not a physical threat, this is online.
Absolutely.
Mainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is physical elements to it, don't get me wrong, but we're online, and that accessibility and that training, the simplicity of training, as we said, starting in a schooling system but keeping it going all the way. The threat's ever evolving. It's not like a normal study where you just go study cybersecurity or learn it once and that's it. We need to keep updating that. So how do we keep that update going and out into the market? Will, you've got a microphone, you want to go?
Yeah, I think just building on that, there's two elements. There's one is just making sure that this is part of the conversation through curriculum and through just good practice. The other is we've demonstrated through that we can deliver things online and hybrid contexts. This is another example, continuing that up, making sure that the trading opportunities are accessible for those. It's not just a CBD specific thing, because there's small regional businesses that are very, like employers of big people, that if they had a cyber incident, that would be devastating, not just for the business, but potentially for that whole regional area. So we need the skills out there.
Look, there's no arbitrary barriers to talent, right? Good people, good ideas. That includes geography. So you need to go looking everywhere. For me,
that was the thing with COVID, wasn't it? That you could actually hire talent and actually have people working remotely.
I think it broke the paradigm. We realised that you can do this in a distributed or a remote manner. So if you're looking for that talent, lift where you're looking and go looking further afield. And I'd define talent as a combination, in this field, as a combination of aptitude and passion. So if someone's passionate and they've got some aptitude, you can teach it. It's worth that investment. They'll pay it back in triplicate, and it doesn't matter really where they are. There's some benefits to getting people together physically, but it's not a war stopper, not a showstopper, right? Yeah, just go looking further afield, and then if you're looking at what fuels looking regionally for that talent, it's people buying sovereign or local capability. That's what creates the jobs. So that's the other side of the coin.
And train them to build them up to be so good they are too good for you and go somewhere else. We want to actually build these people up to go. We talk about retention, but you actually want them to get better and go.
If they continue the journey and they go after greater things, then hey, we've played an important role in that. Yeah, absolutely.
Ron, do you want to just finish us off?
I was going to say about COVID to open up the opportunities we now have, but I think the diversity conversation, if no one's applying for your positions that happens to be female or from regional. How do we get the budget out to encourage them to come in and say...
With role models like yourself and having Paula, I think the more females and the more neurodiverse and the more just diversity across the board, no matter what that means, we get that out there and that becomes it. They see that person, I can be that person now. So it's great you're on the panel, it's great Paula, all the work she does here and all the other ladies in the room. There's a lot of people that are great role models, and the more we see that, then we go, I'm like that, so I can be that thing. I think it's great that you're on the panel and you've done a fantastic job. And
thank you.
I'd like to thank the panel before I hand back over to Paula just to close it off. So just a round of applause for the panel. Thank you. Paula, you're on.
Matt, thank you very much. Thanks, Jason. And thank you to all of our panellists today, all of our speakers, and in particular Jack, even though he has already done a runner and left us. Thank you for his great welcome to country. I also want to thank our sponsors for this week's program of events, because without that, we truly wouldn't have been able to deliver it. And so our sponsors this week are ASA, Snare Solutions right here from South Australia, so another big up for South Australia, Cyber Aware and Cyber Merck. There's been some really rich conversation today on the growth of the cyber ecosystem and the challenges of that growth that we're still facing, and it's been a really great opportunity to highlight some of the successes that we've been able to observe despite the challenges that we've had in the last 12 months. And I think I'd really like to cover off just very quickly some of the things that we've touched on. They've been very diverse. The regional reach, I think, is a really important aspect that we need to put a lot more attention on. Pace and talent, so being able to keep up the pace of the skills that we need and finding and sourcing that talent, educating our recruiters to educate them on recruiting for the right skills that they need and not just recruiting for the same old and for the sake of bringing in an actual cybersecurity person. The important role that legislation and regulation plays, that we're seeing an emergence of more of that. And I think collaboration was front and centre, a theme throughout all of that today. So it's super important that we've got the likes of Matt here leading the front with the Cyber Collaboration Centre here in SA, but as a national asset as well. I just want to also pick up on one comment that Will made, because it particularly resonated with me, and I think this is a time for an opportunity for change, is what Will said, and I could not agree more. We have amazing opportunity laying ahead of us, and we just need to take it in our hands and do the right thing with it, and that is together, collectively, and not in silo from one another. So again, South Australia is streams ahead in working collaboratively. Let's see more of that happening. So we hope you enjoyed today's event. Thank you again to all of our speakers, all of our sponsors, everybody that joined us online as well as in person, and enjoy the rest of AU Cyber Week 2022.